2:47 a.m. A warehouse district on the southern edge of Kansas City, Missouri. The building looks abandoned. Corrugated steel siding rusted at the seams. Windows blacked out with industrial paint. A single sodium light buzzes above a steel door at the rear loading bay, casting an orange halo over cracked asphalt. 43 FBI agents in tactical gear stack along the eastern wall, night vision down. Breaching charges set. A drone hovers 1,800 feet overhead, thermal imaging confirming what informants had whispered for 9 months. Inside, 312 people. Cash changing hands. And in the center of it all, 2 men beating each other inside a chain-link enclosure while a crowd roars. The breach team moves at 2:51 a.m. What they find in the next 97 minutes will unravel a criminal enterprise stretching across 4 states, expose a decorated former sheriff's deputy as its architect, and reveal a trafficking pipeline that fed human beings into cages for the entertainment of paying spectators. This is not a story about an underground fight club. This is a story about how badly the system failed. The breach is textbook. Flashbangs through the loading bay. Agents pour in along 3 vectors. Spectators drop to the concrete floor, hands behind their heads, while the announcer's microphone clatters to the ground mid-sentence. But it is the fighters who tell the agents something is wrong. Neither man stops swinging. Special Agent in Charge Marcus Delvane will later describe the moment in his official statement. The combatants continued engaging each other despite the tactical entry, the flashbangs, the verbal commands. They were not stopping. They could not stop. We understood within seconds that these were not willing participants. Both men collapse only when agents physically separate them. One has a fractured orbital bone. The other is unconscious before he hits the mat. Neither speaks English. Neither carries identification. Both have tracking devices surgically embedded beneath the skin of their left shoulder blades. The warehouse, agents discover, is only the stage. Behind a false wall in the northeast corner of the structure, separated by 12 inches of soundproofed drywall and a reinforced steel door secured with magnetic locks, agents find a corridor. The corridor leads to a converted shipping container. Inside the container, 11 men, ages ranging from 19 to 41. 6 from Eastern Europe, 3 from Central America, 2 from West Africa. All malnourished, all bearing the same surgical scar on the left shoulder. All locked behind a steel mesh gate operated by an external keypad. The men do not cheer when the agents arrive. They do not weep. According to the after-action report filed by Agent Delvane's team, they sat in silence, waiting, because they had learned that any reaction was punished. This was the fighter pool. 23 more would be recovered before sunrise from a residential property in Independence, Missouri, 16 miles away. 34 victims total. Recovered alive. The medical examiner's office would, over the following 6 weeks, identify the remains of 7 more in a wooded property in Cass County. Who built this? The answer arrives in the form of a name that, when it surfaces in the federal indictment 3 days later, will detonate across local news cycles and force the Jackson County Sheriff's Department into a posture of damage control it will never fully escape. Bradley Halvern Krause, age 52. Former Jackson County Sheriff's Deputy. 21 years of service. Recipient of the department's Medal of Valor in 2009 for pulling 2 children from a burning vehicle on Interstate 70. Retired in 2018 with full pension. Public face of a youth boxing nonprofit called Fighters for Tomorrow, which had received over $400,000 in municipal grants between 2019 and 2024. He coached children at a community gym on Saturdays. He emceed an annual charity gala at the Hyatt Regency downtown. He had, 11 months before his arrest, been a finalist for a city council seat in suburban Lee's Summit. And for at least 7 years, according to federal prosecutors, he had operated one of the largest illegal combat sports enterprises in the central United States, generating an estimated $35 million in unreported gambling revenue and trafficking human beings across international borders to serve as disposable entertainment. The contrast between the public man and the private operation is, in the words of U.S. Attorney Eleanor Brask during the press conference announcing the indictments, among the most profound betrayals of institutional trust this office has ever prosecuted. How did it work? The investigation, codenamed Operation Iron Shadow, began in August of the preceding year when a sports betting compliance analyst at a licensed Las Vegas sportsbook flagged unusual wire activity originating from 3 shell companies registered in Delaware. The shell companies, Halverson Logistics LLC, Greater Plains Equipment Holdings, and a third entity registered as a religious nonprofit called Cornerstone Restoration Ministries, had collectively moved $19.4 million through correspondent banking relationships over an 18-month period. None of the entities had any verifiable commercial operation. All 3 traced ownership through layered registrations to a single accountant in Overland Park, Kansas, who would, when confronted with federal subpoenas in March, agree to cooperate in exchange for reduced charges. His statement opened the door. The fights, the accountant told investigators, were held on a rotating schedule across 4 primary venues: the Kansas City warehouse, a converted barn outside Springfield, Missouri, a former meatpacking facility in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a rented commercial space in Wichita, Kansas. Locations changed every 6 to 8 weeks. Spectators received encrypted invitations 48 hours in advance via a custom mobile application that required biometric verification to access. Entry fee: $2,500 per spectator, cash only, payable on arrival. Wagering occurred through a parallel digital platform that converted cash deposits into cryptocurrency tokens redeemable at the end of each event. The platform routed transactions through servers physically located in 3 jurisdictions outside U.S. enforcement reach. Average handle per event, between $280,000 and $460,000. Events per month, between 4 and 7. Annual gambling revenue, as calculated by the FBI's Forensic Accounting Unit, approximately $35 million, with the profit margin estimated at 61% after operational costs. The operation paid no taxes, reported no income, existed entirely in the negative space between regulatory systems. And the fighters? This is where the procedural recitation must pause, because the human reality of what investigators uncovered cannot be neatly cataloged. The men in the shipping container had been recruited, in most cases, through fraudulent job postings advertising construction work, agricultural labor, or restaurant employment in the United States. Travel was arranged. Documents were taken upon arrival, ostensibly for processing. Debt was assigned, transportation costs, housing costs, food costs, at inflated rates that no amount of labor could ever repay. Those who resisted were beaten. Those who attempted escape were tracked through the subcutaneous devices embedded under anesthesia during a forced medical intake procedure performed by a now indicted physician operating from a strip mall clinic in suburban Olathe. Those who fought well were fed. Those who fought poorly were not. The 7 bodies recovered from the Cass County property all showed evidence of blunt force trauma consistent with the type of injuries sustained in unregulated combat. 5 of the 7 had been deceased for more than 18 months at the time of recovery. None had ever been reported missing in any U.S. database, because none had legal status in the country and none had families who knew where to report. They had been, in the language of the trafficking complaint, disposable inventory. That phrase appears in a recorded conversation between Krause and a Tulsa-based associate, intercepted by a court-authorized wiretap in February. It is the phrase that, more than any other piece of evidence, defined the moral architecture of the operation for the federal grand jury that returned the indictment. The arrests, when they came simultaneously. 4-0 M Central. April 14. Krause was taken into custody at his residence in Blue Springs, Missouri. He did not resist. According to the arresting agents, he asked twice whether he could feed his dog before being transported. He was wearing a Kansas City Royals t-shirt and gray sweatpants. He did not request an attorney for 47 minutes. 11 additional individuals were arrested in coordinated raids across 4 states. Among them, a sitting deputy sheriff in Cass County, Missouri, accused of providing advance warning of law enforcement activity in exchange for monthly payments of $4,000 in cash, a licensed physician charged with implanting tracking devices and treating fight injuries without reporting them, a commercial real estate broker who facilitated the lease of venue properties through falsified tenant documentation, and a regional manager for a check cashing chain who structured cash deposits to avoid federal reporting thresholds. The indictment runs 147 pages. Counts include human trafficking, forced labor, racketeering, money laundering, illegal gambling operations, conspiracy to commit murder in relation to the 7 deceased fighters, obstruction of justice, bribery of a public official, and tax evasion exceeding $9 million. If convicted on all counts, Kraus faces a maximum sentence of multiple consecutive life terms. You might wonder how an operation of this scale persisted for 7 years in the middle of a major American metropolitan area without detection. The answer, federal investigators have been careful to emphasize, is not simple negligence. It is structural. The venues were mobile. The clientele was vetted. The financial infrastructure operated below the reporting thresholds that trigger automated review. The victims had no legal standing to seek help. The local law enforcement officer responsible for the geographic area where most events occurred was on the payroll. The public face of the alleged ringleader was a decorated former officer who coached children and shook hands with city council members at ribbon cuttings. The system did not fail because no one was watching. The system failed because the man being watched was the man everyone trusted to do the watching. In the weeks following the arrests, prosecutors moved quickly. The cooperating accountant pleaded guilty in May to conspiracy and money laundering charges, accepting a sentence of 72 months in federal prison in exchange for testimony against the remaining defendants. The Cass County deputy pleaded guilty in June. Sentenced to 14 years. The physician who performed the tracking implant procedures pleaded guilty in July, sentenced to 22 years. His medical license was revoked, and a civil suit filed by survivors seeks the entirety of his professional assets. The commercial real estate broker took his case to trial in September. He was convicted on all counts. Sentenced to 31 years. Kraus refused all plea negotiations. His trial began in November and ran for 63 days. The jury heard testimony from 19 survivors, 14 federal agents, 4 cooperating co-defendants, and 3 forensic accountants. They reviewed over 11,000 pages of financial records, 240 hours of wiretap recordings, and physical evidence including the tracking devices, the medical instruments, and the cage itself. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all 41 counts. At sentencing in February, the presiding judge spoke directly to the defendant for 9 minutes before announcing the sentence. The transcript of those remarks is now part of the public court record. The judge addressed Kraus's prior service, his community standing, the medal he had received for saving children from a burning car. "You were, by every external measure, a man this community had reason to trust," the judge said. "What you did with that trust constitutes one of the most cynical and sustained violations of the public good this court has encountered. The men you trafficked and exploited were not invisible. They were made invisible. You designed a machine to render them invisible, and you profited from their invisibility." The sentence, 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 97 years on financial charges. Restitution, $41.6 million, payable to the surviving victims and the estates of the deceased. The 34 survivors recovered from the operation have been placed in federal trafficking victim assistance programs. Visas have been issued. Medical care has been provided. Several have begun the long process of locating family members they had been told were unreachable. The 7 deceased fighters have been identified, in cases where identification was possible. 3 remain unidentified despite international cooperation with consular services in their countries of suspected origin. Their remains are held in evidence storage pending further investigation. The bank accounts and properties associated with the operation have been seized under federal forfeiture statutes. The Kansas City warehouse where the breach occurred has been demolished. The land sits empty. Fighters for Tomorrow, the youth boxing nonprofit, has been dissolved. Its grant funding has been clawed back. The children it served have been transferred to legitimate community programs operated by the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. There is one question that returns, even now, even after the verdicts and the sentences and the closing of the case file. How many others? How many other Bradley Krauses and how many other warehouses and how many other cities are running operations that have not yet been detected? How many other men sit in shipping containers tonight, tracked beneath their skin, waiting to be fed into cages for the entertainment of paying spectators who believe they are watching willing combat? Federal investigators have, in the months since the verdict, opened 17 new investigations into suspected related operations across the country. 3 have already resulted in arrests. The remaining 14 are active. This was not a single criminal enterprise. This was a model. And the model, according to senior officials at the FBI's Human Trafficking Coordination Center, is spreading. If you have information about suspected trafficking activity, the National Human Trafficking Hotline operates 24 hours a day. Tips can be submitted anonymously. The number is 1-888-373-7888. The text line is 233-733. The men in the shipping container were not invisible because no one could see them. They were invisible because no one was looking.